What's up, everybody? We are back. We are not doing a best ball draft here in the middle of the afternoon. We save those for the nighttime, but we're coming at you with a special live edition of Fantasy Football, kind of going over the new tools that are on the website. So PFF.com has kind of revamped, I should say is a better word, the Fantasy Football Research Tools page and section. Obviously, we've added the Fantasy Football Draft Guide to the site. So we're going to be kind of just taking a deep dive into some of the new tools, some of the new formats that are in this on the website over at pff.com. And as always, I'm going to be joined by Jared Evans. Jared, what's up, my man?
Not too much. I am pumped about all of the great additions we've got now on the PFF Fantasy website, and excited to go through it all with you now and explain some of the sweet features that are going to help us both and all of our great listeners win some money this year playing fantasy football.
That is the goal for sure. And again, if you're just tuning in, if you're not new to PFF, you want to get in, a lot of this stuff is behind the paywall, the subscription, the premium subscription. And if you want to get in on that, this is the perfect time. 40% off any PFF subscription. The banner is down below, so I wouldn't forget to say it. Use promo code SAVE40 and you get 40% off PFF subscription for those first-time subscribers. So let's dive in to some of these research tools that you're going to be, I use these all the time. My articles, I would be lost without the tools that are on this website for a lot of the content that I create. So it's obviously a big super help. So first things first, again, the PPR, all the different rankings are up on the site. Again, the week one rankings aren't up yet, but as soon as we get a bit closer to the season, those will be up. But just to kind of take a look at, our PPR rankings, this is where you can see auction values are generated. So if you're playing an auction value, those are also there as well. So once this loads up. So again, so this year as well, we have more rankers. Jared is joining on the fun. He's trying to compete with the big dogs, i.e. Nate Yonke, who cannot be stopped. You can't stop that guy from just finishing first. Again, shout out to Nate for finishing not only, I think he finished in the top 10 the weekly contest last year in Fantasy Pros, but he also finished number 3 overall from the entire draft. So congratulations to him. One of my goals is going to try to beat him this year. We'll see what happens, but Jared has joined the fight. So it's going to be a very heated battle for sure with these rankings. But yeah, you can get the consensus rankings. You can go by PPR, half PPR, standard. I don't know who plays standard anymore. 2 quarterback leagues. So a lot of different ways that you can kind of set up your draft rankings. Also have best ball rankings, which can differ a little bit. Dynasty rankings. I know I have those up there. So does Yonke. And then IDP. Shout out to John Macri for doing the deep, dirty work on these IDP players for those guys that are playing in IDP leagues. Those are also up on the website, all live, and we're all trying to keep them as up to date as possible. I try to at least hit them once or twice a week, especially when we get breaking news. Jared, thoughts on the rankings? How have the rankings been going for you, man? It's your first time.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun going through them and figuring out which players I am higher on versus the consensus. That's maybe something we'll say for a little later. But as far as these awesome features go, you can filter and toggle through each position if you want to look at where the top quarterbacks are ranked, where the running backs, receivers, all that stuff. Makes it really easy for everyone to kind of see which players specific rankers are high on compared to the consensus and where you might think your players fit into that equation. And then we also have a brand new ADP feature here to compare rankings versus where you can draft these guys on different websites. Ooh. So that is an awesome feature and just makes it really, really easy for you using this tool.
Yep. And again, you can go by ranker. So if you want to look at my rankings specifically, you want to look at Jared's rankings, you want to look at Ian's rankings, you can do that specifically. If you hate one of us and you really like the other one, then there you go. There's your option. You don't need to, but I really think that the consensus rankings are a really good meeting of the minds because that's what you get. Like you're getting 6 experts rankings in here and the consensus are really going to be sharp. I think that's really going to be helpful again in that way. Because it's all factoring in players that some of us are higher on, some of us are lower on. Because there's always going to be some discrepancies between some of the analysts. But I think consensus is really going to put you in a solid direction from where you're going for your draft, especially by the certain format that it's formatted.
Yep. And then one last awesome feature that we added this year is if you click on each specific player, you can get our fantasy blurb, little breakdown their 2021 fantasy projections, weekly results from last year. This is just really, really awesome data right at your fingertips from the rankings page.
Yep. So as you can see, we're very different from. We're all in on CMC as the number one pick.
There.
Not a surprise there. But again, yeah, this is all here. You get the blurbs, so you don't even necessarily need to go into the draft kit. You can see them all from the rankings page. And so a lot of cool stuff there for sure. Let's get into, so yeah, you kind of hit it off the top. You talked about one of the cool things that's added that's actually brand new. And let me see if I can find it. So fantasy finishes, so weekly fantasy finishes. So if you subscribe to the draft guide last year, this was actually in there. And I remember going back to it constantly, looking at certain things from it, but it wasn't on the website. It was just in the PDF that we sent out last year. And now it's fully on the website. Again, it's integrated to the draft guide as well. But this is just people are going to be referencing this thing all the time because it's a lot easier to conceptualize how good a player was based on how many, X finishes that they had at a certain position. Because, if I tell you, Jared, okay, this quarterback averaged 20 fantasy points per game, like, what does that mean to you? So sometimes it's hard to figure out what we're actually talking about. Whereas if you say, hey, Josh Allen, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 times finished as a top 5 quarterback, that really tells you, oh my God, like Josh Allen was unstoppable last year. So I think that this is a really cool feature. Again, the top 5 finishes are all highlighted in green, which I think is really cool. Again, hey, Cam Newton, there we go. 2 top 5 finishes for Cam Newton last year. More than Matt Ryan. More than Matt Ryan. That's a fun fact. Cam Newton had more top 4 finishes as a quarterback than Matt Ryan did last year. Blown away.
Yeah, I freaking love this fantasy finish page. It's something that I reference in my research all the time, and I really leaned on it when coming up with my rankings. It just lets you see how these players do, because ultimately we want them to perform on a weekly basis. How they do in the span of an entire season is not the exact picture of how to win in fantasy football. So these are a great crutch. Use them, study them, and yeah, it's awesome.
Look at this David Montgomery finish, 6'1", 6'2", 8'5". David Montgomery, 1 finish inside the top 10 to start the year. Just borderline unstoppable to end the year. Similar to another running back who's been highly debated a little bit this offseason, Jonathan Taylor, after his bye week.
Yep.
He had one, again, exact same scenario as David Montgomery. He had 1 top 10 finish to start the year, and then he closed out the year with a bang with 3 top 5 finishes. That's it? That's interesting. 3 top 5 finishes for Jonathan Taylor. That is interesting.
They were glorious, though. They were damn glorious.
Yes, they were very good. Let's look at the receivers, see if we see anything else that's kind of cool. But yeah, this is brand new to the site, at least from what I can remember. But again, it's something that I'm going to be referencing a lot. So I think that it's a ton of fun here as well. Okay, we got a question here. I mentioned someone was talking about FanDuel. Yes, there are other rankings specific. So you can actually see where players ranked in different scoring formats. So DraftKings, FanDuel, Yahoo, if you're playing other DFS. So I think that's important because look, these formats have different scoring. They have the bonuses. Like it's important to know, again, most of the people, at least when I'm writing, usually kind of just stick to just general PPR because it becomes really confusing if you're just changing everything all over the place. But this can be helpful to kind of weed through that a little bit more. But yeah, so you have GFS DraftKings as an option, Best Ball, again, IDP as well. So yeah, go out.
Kirk Cousins with a couple top 3 finishes there at the end of the year on DraftKings.
Dude, everyone hates Kirk. Everyone hates Kirk Cousins, but he's probably undervalued because he doesn't run, but he's just solid. He's a solid quarterback, gets it done. Really solid in 2 quarterback leagues, Scott Fishbowl, all that good stuff. So he's probably going to be. He's probably going to finish like as a top 15 quarterback, and no one's going to draft him like a top 15 quarterback probably, because there'll be some busts from some of these rookies and some guys that were chasing the upside. Yeah, like Hurts, for example. Like Hurts can be QB1 or QB like 30. Like it's really possible where he could just friggin' take it by storm. I lean on that side a little bit more, but I am also aware that the Eagles offense is no guarantee to be just this juggernaut of a scoring team. Like it's definitely possible.
Yeah, he can't be too bad though with his rushing. As long as he's just actually starting, he's going to be a top 12 guy, I think, just because of the rushing cheat code.
Yeah. All right. So other things. So this was something that we got put into last year. So we have expected fantasy points. So I've referenced this a lot in my articles. And basically, this is just a better way of predicting how good a player is going to do, because you have fantasy points, which again is just accumulation of how good a player did, essentially based on their production. But expected fantasy points is how did this player, based on their opportunity, based on their usage, based on where they saw targets, where they received carries, how many points should they have scored? So this really helps identify players that are shooting above expectation. Maybe there's a chance that this player is going to regress a little bit more, or players that are shooting under expectation that we can expect for a bounce back performance. So I think that the really easy example here, and again, this isn't a perfect science, because a lot of times players that perform under expectation are just bad. That's a thing that happens. But if there are reasons why, you can find that, okay, this is why this player was bad, not due to the fact that they are a bad player, then that's a really easy way to get some type of leverage on players. So again, number one, of course, got to bring up AJ Green, who scored the most fantasy points under expectation last year, followed by Jerry Jeudy. Now, this is not me saying in one way, shape, or form, or any shape or form, that AJ Green is a buy low player. It's not my opinion. Don't want him on my team. But Jerry Jeudy, an ascending talent, second-year player. We all saw how bad his quarterback play was last year. That is a result, also some of his drops. That is a result of why this is so low for Jerry Jeudy, why he shows up on here. But it's also a screaming opportunity that if he gets better quarterback play, Teddy Bridgewater's under center. That's more accurate quarterback play. You're going to get better results from Jerry Jeudy in year two. I'm really high on Jeudy. Jared, I know you like Jeudy as well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Go to the quarterback screen for who scored the most points under expectation for QBs. Is a Mr. Joey Burrow, who is one of my favorite late round quarterback options, although his ADP seems to be rising to that mid round range. But he's the guy that I'm targeting in all my drafts. That number right there shows you exactly why. And now he's added Jamar Chase. Bengals defense is not very good. Burrow had the most dropbacks among any quarterback before he got hurt last year. So it is going to be a fantasy points party in Cincinnati this year.
Fantasy points party. Absolutely love it. And again, these are examples of players performing under expectation. And you could also look at players that perform over expectation. Jared, I know you like Aaron Rodgers, but I'm just telling you, he's not going to be able to throw as many touchdowns, or at least he's not going to throw the same amount of touchdowns at the same rate he was last year.
I agree with you wholeheartedly. And assuming Rodgers comes back, where are those touchdowns going to go to? Who's going to score them?
I guess it's going to just be every other year. It's going to be Aaron Jones scores like 20 touchdowns. Aaron Rodgers.
How is Aaron Jones a player that you can get in the middle and the end of the second round? It just boggles my mind. This is the exact same thing that happened to Devontae Adams last year. People were just overlooking him. They're like, oh, Aaron Jones scored too many touchdowns last year, but the Packers offense is still awesome. I don't know what's going to happen. And Adams goes out and scores 17 touchdowns. So those are going to Aaron Jones this year. It's happening. He's a top 5 running back.
Aaron Jones, maybe A.J. Dillon gets in on the action. The quads need to be fed. They need touchdowns to keep them honest. So yes, that's another example. The Kirk Cousins is up here. Kyler Murray is up here. So again, players that if you can find ways that's okay, can we realistically expect this player to regress? Then okay, then that's an argument. Like Tannehill, for example, was a player that I didn't like a lot, but when you add in an elite player like Julio Jones, it's now okay. He's been above expectation now for 2 straight years. He's been the player that's performed the most above expectation over the past 2 seasons at quarterback, and all he did was add the receiver that leads the NFL history in yards per game. So it's really hard to just look at, okay, well, he's probably going to regress. Well, there's a reason why he won't, because they added Julio Jones. So those are reasons that you can kind of look and see and make different decisions based on that. Let's see what else. So again, we went through the rankings already. Projections. Again, projections are a good tool to use. They are different from rankings because this is really taking into account more of a median outcome, where we're kind of just looking at the average of, okay, based on their target share, based on how many things we're going to project this offense to run, it gives you an idea of where a player will probably end up, but rankings take into consideration more of a player's range of outcomes, which player has more upside, which player could finish as an RB1 versus, okay, the projections say this player is better, but I know that this player plays on a better offense. Like their chances of scoring 15 touchdowns are significantly higher than this player scoring 5 touchdowns, because touchdowns, again, these are all going to be we're not going to be any outlandish touchdown projections, but we know that touchdowns drive fantasy points a lot of the time. So again, you're not going to see Devontae Adams projected for 20 touchdowns in here. At least I don't think he is. I guess I should check. Yeah, we have him projected for 10 touchdowns. Okay, so it's still a lot, but it's significantly less than he had last year. Again, you didn't have anyone with more than 11 touchdowns. Someone will probably catch more than 11 touchdowns next season.
Yeah. Yes. Some of these projections, especially the really bullish ones, make me kind of rethink how I'm going to use my rankings, because these projections are generally conservative by nature. So when the data is telling you, oh, this guy is really projected to have a monster year, I think you should kind of reevaluate. Calvin Ridley is one that really comes to mind. He is someone who our projections are just absolutely in love with. 169 receiving yards. I mean, because we got his target share through the roof with Julio gone. But man, that is really exciting.
Yeah, I mean, Ridley has wide receiver 1 upside. Again, you're looking for, because again, everyone is putting Pitts in as that guy, but what if it's a scenario where it's just like the Green Bay Packers were last year, and it's just like, yes, you have some players benefiting from a quarterback that's throwing it at a really efficient level, but at the end of the day, Calvin Ridley is Matt Ryan's guy in the red zone. Like, he targets him in the red zone like no one else. So if I had to make a bet for a receiver to have an outlandish touchdown scoring, it'd probably be Ridley, because you don't know if Matt Ryan's going to necessarily rely on Kyle Pitts in the red zone, or Hayden Hurst, or Russell Gage, or like any of these guys. Like, all we've seen is him target Ridley at an absurd amount whenever Julio's not playing, and Julio's not playing next year for the Falcons. So, like, I have question marks about the Falcons offense overall, but I don't have any question marks about Calvin Ridley whatsoever. I think that he's going to just be a target monster. I don't think that you can go wrong drafting him in the second round. I think is kind of where he's going to end up going. So I don't think you can go wrong with him. We got a question in here about strength of schedule, so I'll bring that up right now. So here's a question. So is strength of schedule metric fluid over the season or all preseason based? So right now, yes. So it changes as we get more information about players, teams, etc. So all of these numbers here are rankings based on the data that we have from each of the teams. So if we find out, okay, if Jalen Ramsey gets hurt or something like that, like him being hurt is going to factor into teams that are playing the Los Angeles Rams. And it's going to reflect that, okay, this matchup is now much more positive, much more favorable now that he's not on the field, and vice versa with other injuries and things like that. So this will change through the course of the season, potentially through the offseason. If guys get hurt during training camp, I'd assume that this is going to change as well. But again, the strength of schedule tool should not be a do-all, die-all, but you should really be aware of who you're drafting and who they play like in the early weeks of the season. Because if you draft a quarterback and realize that they're playing the Rams week 1, again, I think in that it's a bad example because they're playing the Bears. No one's drafting Andy Dalton. Don't draft Andy Dalton in fantasy. And you probably can't start Justin Fields because he probably won't start that game. But just be aware of who they're playing and vice versa. If Trevor Lawrence plays the Texans week 1, like, he's going to be a top 12 quarterback for me in my rankings that week. He'll probably be 12 because, I mean, you're not going to start Trevor Lawrence against the Texans? I'm pretty sure I am. So that's something to keep in mind with strength of schedule. I think that we're trying to roll out something where we can look at early season strength of schedule, so you can just look at the first 5 weeks. I know that I've highlighted that a lot. I know that the Rams, again, they keep coming to mind because I've been writing about the Rams all day, so that's kind of why I keep bringing them up as an example. But they have a tough opening schedule against the it's the Colts, some other team. Oh, the Colts, Bears, and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So not the greatest matchups of defenses that you'd want for a team that has a brand new quarterback. So the Rams, maybe they started out a little bit slow. We saw it with the Bucs last year. It kind of took them a little bit to get going, but don't necessarily cut and run on Rams players if they don't, exceed expectations through the first 3 weeks because they had tough matchups. Because as we saw with the fantasy finishes, matchups matter. Like defenses matter to an extent. Like if you're playing bad run defenses, like your running backs are going to smash. And if they're good run defenses, then they're probably not going to. But just know that and be aware of. So when these players' values fluctuate, say you don't get Cam Akers in your draft, you really like him, so you just trade for him after week 2 when they play the Buccaneers in week 3. People are going to be, oh no, he sucks, like he's a bust. So you just grab him before you play the Bucs, and then you got him for a value, and then he's just going to smash the rest of the year. So that's at least the way I use the strength of schedule tool. Jared?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, all that is a great summary. The only thing I would add is I don't really use or lean on the strength of schedule for like the superstar type players, especially in the early part of the year. But if you're trying to figure out who my late round quarterback should be, maybe if you're drafting like a Justin Fields or a Trey Lance and you're looking for a streamer for the first couple weeks of the season, then definitely lean on this tool. Try to find someone who might have some great matchups early on in the year. And then same thing if you're looking for breakout or sleeper receivers for the ends of your draft or running backs and whatnot. That's really where the tool can shine for you.
Yep. And you can filter by the different positions. So you go quarterback, running back, tight end, defense. Again, defense, you want to get Denver Broncos in your drafts because they play the they play the Jaguars at one point. They play the Giants and they play the Jets. So those are 3 layup matchups that the Broncos, #real life good defense that you want to have in your lineup. Like people are going to draft the Steelers, Rams, Ravens, Washington football team. Like those are going to be the top defenses in your fantasy draft. So you just slide right in with your last pick. If you have to draft a defense, slide right in, take Denver, start them week 1 against the Giants. Daniel Jones throws a pick 6, and you're feeling really pretty about your lineup in week 1.
The Daniel Jones slander is already out.
Hey man. Just because he throws pick 6s doesn't mean he's a bad fantasy quarterback, okay?
Dude, pick 6s are fantastic for fantasy football because your quarterback comes right back out the next possession and you know he's going to be throwing.
Exactly. It's like, all right, we're in a hole now. I got to throw. Can't run the football anymore. So that kind of covers most of the research tools. Again, we have a general stats, which is just a collection of fantasy football stats. So again, it's not just fantasy points per game. It goes a little bit deeper into that. So you have average depth of target. You have 300-yard passing games, end zone targets, end zone throws, touchdown percentage. So a little bit more in depth than just fantasy points per game, but you can do fantasy points per drop back. So just more efficiency metrics. Again, you can go by the different settings. You can do it by different position. You can do it by team, and you can also incorporate the week. So again, this is more of a cumulative kind of look back and see. Not so predictive. Again, we kind of try to call out certain predictive measurables and metrics in our articles, but it's good to always kind of just look back and kind of see a player. How did they do when X player was out? So this is another tool that I obviously use a lot. I probably use the expected fantasy points tool a little bit more just because, as I said, like expected fantasy points are just a more predictive measurement of what this player can actually score in the future based on their workload versus, this is really just kind of telling us what happened, which is helpful and it's important to know. But at the same time, that's baked into our projections. Like at this point, like me telling you the projections of a certain player is probably more helpful than me just saying, oh, he's averaged X fantasy points per game last year. Like, because unless everything is exactly the same as last year, which in most cases for these teams is not, like you need to kind of get out of that mindset of, okay, last year they did this, last year they did this. It's like, okay, that doesn't matter anymore. Like 2020 is gone. Thank God. We're on to 2021. A much better year. Get fans in the stadiums. Like this is going to be way better. So just kind of keep that in mind. Is there anything on here that you use a lot, Jared, that you wanted to kind of highlight?
Yeah, my favorite component to the stats tool is definitely the red zone usage data for both rushing and receiving to just kind of see how players are being used in scoring area. Obviously, touchdowns are the hardest stat to predict, on a week-to-week basis. And so this is going to be really valuable once the season gets going, and then we can kind of see which players are being used closest to scoring range. Because obviously, if you're getting end zone targets, if you're getting red zone targets, if you're getting the inside the 5 carries, but maybe you're not the one scoring the touchdowns yet, that's something that might regress up to the mean, and then that can be something that we can target for our fantasy teams. But in terms of last year's data, it's not going to be as valuable, but this is going to be a fantastic tool for you to use once the season starts.
Yes, it has a lot of good stuff in here. trying to get these end zone targets to pop up, try to get them to populate. I was just going to highlight that Mike Williams has, I don't even know, just a godly amount of end zone targets, and he has caught, well, basically 0 of them. So Mike Williams again.
It's coming.
Yeah. And again, we joke about regression here, but it's real. Like, it's a real thing. And it seems really counterintuitive to say that, oh, well, because this player didn't score any touchdowns last year, it means they're going to score a lot of touchdowns this year. Like, it kind of does if you're looking at if their role isn't changing. Like, it's really weird to kind of conceptualize and kind of get around. But once you really think about it, it really makes a lot more sense. Like, again, sorry, going back to the Rams, but Cam Akers, right? He had 8 carries inside the 5-yard line, and he scored 1 touchdown. Jared Goff scored more rushing touchdowns inside the 5-yard line than Cam Akers did. Like, that is not going to happen again. Like, all of them did. Darrell Henderson scored more touchdowns. Malcolm Brown scored more touchdowns. Like, that's not going to happen again. If Cam Akers is the featured running back, which I believe that he will be, and he's getting the carries inside the 5-yard line, he's going to probably score double-digit touchdowns next year. I think that in a top offense, I think the Rams can be. Like, we're going to see so many touchdowns with Cam Akers, and that's why, his fantasy numbers were really good at the end of last year, but not like in an elite number, and that's why, because he didn't score a lot of touchdowns, and that's what can buoy players to kind of fail to meet expectations because of how many touchdowns they scored, and it can make players fly more under the radar because of the lack of touchdowns that they scored. But like Jared said, touchdowns are kind of fickle. Like, it's really hard to sometimes predict them, and they kind of come in bunches at times. I mean, Kamara scored 6 touchdowns in one freaking game. Like that's really hard. Like, it's really hard to predict that to happen.
Yep, exactly. Cam Akers adjust those ranks upwards.
Oh, dude, every time, man. I have one article I wrote about Cam Akers like in January, and I just reread and I'm like, dude, I'm all back. I'm like all in. Like, I'll like leave it alone for like a while. I'll come back to it and I just read and it's like what? Like, this is perfect. Like, I see no flaws in his outlook. I know that it's not flawless, but it does look really, really good. I guess I'll kind of leave it at that. So that's pretty much it for the tools. I guess we'll just check out the draft guide as we kind of wrap up here. Let me find that. The rankings. All right, here? We got to go to the home site again. All right, so if you're just tuning in, remember promo code SAVE40, get 40% off any PFF subscription with promo code SAVE40. All right, let's find the fantasy draft guide. What's hot? There we go. And again, tons of more content up on the site right now. We've got Kevin Cole doing his running back breakout series. I am doing team by team previews, just released the Arizona Cardinals. Ian is continuing his 100 fantasy football facts in 100 days, and he just did something about 2020 Premier handcuff running backs. Jared, what do you have coming on the table?
I got a piece highlighting some players that I have ranked higher than the consensus this year. A little breakout type style piece, which should be dropping on Friday on the site.
Sweet. Actually, yeah. So we actually have 2 more things. This is the draft guide. So again, it's set up much more like our other draft guide. So like the real NFL draft guide. So it's all on site. It's not longer in the PDF form, but it's smooth, guys. It's really nice. Like, you can filter it much easier than before. You don't need to scroll, so you can look up a certain player that you want to look at. Let's look at Cam Akers. There he is. And he just pops right up. There we go.
There it is.
So
we also have cheat sheets where you can see all these rankings and draft boards in kind of like a one-stop shop. It's printable if you need to print these out to like make notes on. And that's a great way to kind of lean on our rankings for your draft.
Yes, the cheat sheets are very, very nice. They don't look exactly like this. They are more just like in a one single sheet. So again, it's really nice though for you if you're going to a live draft, which everybody, if you can do it, let's bring the live drafts back. 2021 is a new year. Let's get it back. The live drafts are where it's fun. People breaking out the pencils and you want to be ready. So just print out the cheat sheet. If you've done no research whatsoever, you're just tuning in, you have no idea, just get the cheat sheets. And I guarantee you'll be better off than most people at your draft that show up with some magazine that's been outdated since, however long ago. Like, this will be really helpful for a lot of you that are drafting, getting back into it or whatever. So
yeah, and it'll update all off season as we kind of adjust our rankings to various news and whatnot that breaks over the next coming weeks through training camp.
Yeah, and look, if you're not still sold on getting a PFF subscription, again, this is the best time to do it. If you're going to do it, this is the best time to dive in. But look, we're going to be able to give our help a lot during the preseason because we have people looking at every single one of these snaps for every single preseason game, and we're going to know a lot more about player roles potentially on teams. And you're going to see some significant rises and followers after the preseason as we kind of evaluate certain roster spots with players that we thought were starters or not starters, and things change based on how things kind of shape up in the preseason. So it's going to be really helpful. So we'll see some rankings changes as the offseason continues. But that's going to wrap us up for now. Jared, any final words for the people that are watching? The 72 people, 72 strong that are still watching.
Yeah, thanks for tuning in. And if you haven't gotten your PFF subscription yet, now is the time to do it. $5.99 can get you access to this awesome draft guide. So it seems like a no-brainer to me.
Yes, it's a no-brainer. So again, make sure you guys tune in. We do best ball drafts Thursday night, 7 p.m., same place, same time, or not same time, at 7 p.m. Eastern. So yeah.